Have you ever felt your heart stop, not from fear, but from the truth you never wanted to hear? It happened to me one quiet afternoon, when my little granddaughter walked up to me, her tiny hands clutching a doll, her eyes hesitant but honest. She whispered, "Grandma, Mommy said not to tell you, but she has your house papers. She made new ones that look the same, and said she'll take this house soon." For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. Her innocent voice echoed in my ears, forged papers, fake documents. Take the house. My hands went cold. The clock on the wall ticked louder than my heartbeat, and I realized the person I had welcomed into my home with trust, the woman I had treated like my own daughter, had already decided to erase me from my own life. Before I tell you what happened next, I just want to say thank you to everyone listening right now. Wherever you are, maybe sitting with your cup of tea, maybe lying in bed after a long day, thank you for being here. If you feel comfortable, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always find comfort in knowing someone, somewhere, is sharing this silence with me. All right, let's start from the beginning. Because betrayal doesn't happen overnight. It grows slowly, like cracks in a wall you thought was strong. My name is Irene Wallace, and if you've made it this far, I want to ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that you couldn't even imagine they could hurt you? Have you ever looked into the eyes of your own family and thought, no, they could never betray me? I used to think that too. Until the day my 7-year-old granddaughter told me something that shattered everything I believed about love, loyalty, and family. I wasn't always this quiet woman living alone in a small house with ivy crawling up the walls. Once upon a time, this house was full of life. My late husband, our son, his laughter echoing through the hallway, the smell of Sunday breakfast, the sound of rain against the old wooden windows. Now it's just me. Me and the memories that don't seem to age even when I do. That week, my daughter-in-law Melissa had gone out of town. She said she had to finalize some property matters in another district. I had offered to go with her, but she smiled that polite, stiff smile of hers and said, "No, Mother Irene, I'll manage." She left our little girl, Sophie, with me. My sweet, bright-eyed granddaughter, the only part of this family that still feels innocent. We spent our days together like best friends. She'd sit on the kitchen counter while I made breakfast, her legs swinging, asking questions about the world. "Doddy, why do people grow old? Why do people die?" And I'd tell her, because life is like a story, darling. Every story must have an ending. But that evening, the story she told me was not one I was ready to hear. It was around sunset. The air smelled of rain, and the city lights were just starting to flicker. Sophie was coloring in her little book while I sorted through old documents in my study. She looked up and said, "Doddy, can I tell you a secret?" I smiled and said, "Of course, my love." "What secret?" She hesitated, twisting her small fingers together, her eyes darting toward the door. "Mummy said I shouldn't tell you." I stopped what I was doing. "Shouldn't tell me what, sweetheart?" She bit her lip. She said that she made papers for the house, the ones that look just like yours. She said not to tell you because she's going to put them in your drawer so nobody knows. The sound in the room changed. The rain outside seemed to stop. Even the ticking clock on the wall paused for a moment. I stared at her, not understanding what I'd just heard. My heart sank so fast I could barely speak. "Sweetheart, what did you just say?" She repeated, word for word, exactly the same thing. Then, as if she realized she had said something wrong, she clamped her hands over her mouth. "I'm sorry, Doddy. Don't tell Mummy I told you. She'll get mad at me." I forced a smile that must have looked more like pain. "It's all right, darling. You did nothing wrong." But inside me, a storm was rising. After she went to bed, I sat alone in the study. I could still hear her little voice echoing, "Papers that look like yours." At first, I told myself maybe I misunderstood. Maybe Melissa was just updating something for the property. Maybe she meant no harm. But that little voice inside me, the one that knows when something is wrong, it wouldn't stop whispering at midnight. I opened my drawer and pulled out the folder that held all my important papers. The property deed, my husband's will, my signature, my name. Everything seemed fine, until I noticed one thing: my old file had been moved. The dust pattern on the table was slightly disturbed, and the edge of the file had a new crease, as if someone had pulled it out recently. I sat there for a long time, staring at that file. My hands were shaking, but I needed to be sure. I called the only person I could trust, Mr. Coleman, my late husband's friend, a retired lawyer who had known us for decades. When he answered, his voice was groggy. "Irene, is everything all right?" I told him everything. Every word Sophie had said. There was a long pause, and then he said quietly, "Irene, don't make any sudden moves. Don't accuse her yet. If she's really done this, she'll cover her tracks fast. You need to find real proof. Proof." I whispered. "She's my daughter-in-law, Coleman. I helped raise her child," he sighed. "And she might be helping herself to your house. Irene, don't ignore it. Gather evidence first." The rest of that night, I didn't sleep. I walked through every corner of my house: the kitchen, the guest room, Melissa's room. I tried to remember how everything used to feel when trust was still alive here. But all I could feel was a cold distance, the kind that creeps in when love turns into greed. The next morning, I made Sophie breakfast, pretending nothing was wrong. I watched her eat her toast and laugh, completely unaware of the storm she had accidentally unleashed. When she went to play outside, I went into Melissa's room. I shouldn't have, I know, but I had to. I checked the drawers, the cabinet, her dressing table. At first, I found nothing, just perfume bottles, scarves, neatly folded clothes. And then, inside a brown envelope hidden behind her vanity mirror, I found it, a set of documents exactly like mine. Same header, same property title, same seal. But when I looked closer, my heart stopped. The owner's name wasn't Irene Wallace, it said Melissa Wallace. The signature looked like mine, perfectly copied. Even the pen stroke pressure was the same. I felt dizzy. I sat down on the edge of the bed, clutching the papers like they were poison. The woman I had loved like my own daughter. The woman I had let into my home. The mother of my only grandchild had forged documents to steal my house. And I wouldn't have known, if not for a child's innocent honesty. For as I just sat there, staring at the fake papers, the rain tapping softly against the window, I thought of my son, God rest his soul. He had trusted me with his family when he passed. I had promised him that Melissa and Sophie would always have a home. Was this his idea of home now? A house full of lies and betrayal. By nightfall, I finally stood up and locked the fake papers in my drawer. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Coleman's words echoed in my head, "Don't accuse without proof." But I already had proof. And still, I wasn't ready to believe it. Later that night, Sophie came to me again. She climbed into my lap, her little head resting on my chest. "Doddy," she whispered, "are you mad at Mummy?" I froze. "Why do you ask that?" "Because you look sad today. Mummy says sometimes grown-ups get sad when they can't let go of old things. Old things, my house. My memories, my life." I smiled weakly. "I'm not mad, darling. I'm just thinking." She yawned and fell asleep in my arms. I carried her to bed and sat beside her, brushing her hair away from her face. I thought, how can a home that was built with love turn into a battlefield of deceit? And I promised myself one thing that night: no matter how this ends, I will protect Sophie from ever feeling the weight of betrayal that I felt tonight. The next morning, I called Mr. Coleman again. "You were right," I said, my voice trembling. "I found the papers." He exhaled slowly. "Irene, I'm sorry. Listen carefully. Bring them to my office tomorrow. We'll start the process quietly. If she's really committed fraud, we'll need to get a verification from the registrar's office. Will she know?" I asked. "Not yet," he said. "But be careful. If she suspects you know, she might try to move the original documents or destroy evidence." I hung up and looked around my home. Every corner seemed different now, every picture frame, every curtain. Even the floor felt unfamiliar. How strange that a person can live in the same house for decades, and yet one secret can make it feel like a stranger's place overnight. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept replaying Sophie's little voice. The truth had come from the most innocent lips, and now I carried it like a burden I couldn't set down. Outside, the rain poured again, steady and relentless. I stood by the window, staring into the dark garden, and whispered, "Why, Melissa, why?" There was no answer, only the sound of rain, like the house itself was crying with me. And that was the night I realized something was truly broken. Not just a trust, but a bond that could never be repaired the same way again. When dawn came, I didn't feel rested, only heavier. The night silence had been thick with thoughts I couldn't escape. I stood by the kitchen window, watching the city wake up under a pale Ethiopian sun. The sound of early traffic drifted in, mixed with the scent of wet earth from last night's rain. I made tea, but I couldn't drink it. My hands were trembling too much. The moment I'd been dreading had come, the moment to confirm whether my daughter-in-law had truly betrayed me. Sophie came padding into the kitchen in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Doddy, you're up so early," she said, her voice still sleepy. I smiled faintly. "Couldn't sleep, my love." "Come, have breakfast." She sat down, unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. I packed her lunch and dropped her off at her friend's house like I always did when Melissa was away. I hugged her a little tighter that morning, as though part of me already knew everything was about to change. Then I took the brown envelope with the forged papers, locked the house, and left. The streets of Addis Ababa buzzed with the usual morning chaos, vendors calling out, buses honking, schoolchildren running. Yet it all felt distant, like a movie I was watching from behind glass. When I reached Mr. Coleman's office, he was already waiting for me. The years had made him slower, his hair now completely silver, but his mind was still sharp, and his loyalty sharper. He looked at me and said softly, "Are you sure you're ready for this, Irene?" "No," I replied truthfully. "But I need to know." He nodded, took the envelope, and opened it on his desk. His eyes scanned the pages carefully. When he reached the signature, he frowned. "She's good," he murmured. "Whoever helped her knows how to forge. But see here, the registration number. This can't be real." "We'll go to the registrar's office today, quietly." The registrar's building wasn't far. A large, grey structure with peeling paint and the smell of paper and ink. We walked through its corridors like ghosts, my heart pounding with every step. At the counter, Coleman presented both sets of papers, the original and the forged, to a clerk he knew. "I just need a quick verification," he said casually. "Routine cross-check." The clerk adjusted his glasses, took both files, and disappeared into the back room. We waited. 5 minutes, 10, 15. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Finally, he returned, looking uneasy. "Sir," he said slowly, "these two documents have the same file number." Coleman leaned forward. "The same number?" "Yes," the clerk said. but one is registered under Irene Wallace from 1987, and another copy, updated 3 weeks ago, is under Melissa Wallace. It's the same property ID. My stomach dropped. Coleman asked quietly, who submitted the new one. The clerk hesitated. A woman named Melissa Wallace. She said it was a correction of ownership, a family update. It even had a notary seal. My legs felt weak. I gripped the edge of the counter for balance. Correction of ownership. That was what she called it. She hadn't just forged papers, she'd rewritten my life. Coleman placed a hand on my arm. Irene, we need to go. Now. We stepped outside, the daylight blinding. I could barely breathe. I had imagined betrayal, but hearing it confirmed made it something else entirely. Real, solid, irreversible. Coleman turned to me as we reached his car. We'll file an official complaint. Fraudulent transfer of ownership. I'll prepare everything. But Irene, this will go to court. I whispered. Against my own daughter-in-law. His voice was firm. You're not doing this to hurt her. You're doing this to protect yourself. To protect your husband's legacy. She's the one who crossed that line. That afternoon, I went back home, but nothing felt the same. Every room seemed smaller, colder. The walls felt like they were listening. When Melissa returned 2 days later, I could see it in her eyes. She knew something had shifted. She greeted me with a practiced smile. Mother Irene, she said sweetly, how's Sophie been? I hope she wasn't any trouble. I forced a calm tone. She was perfect. As always, Melissa's eyes darted toward my study. I noticed it. Every move she made was slightly too careful. She walked in and out of rooms as if checking something. And when she saw that brown envelope missing, she froze for just a second, but enough for me to notice Dot at dinner. She tried to act normal. But her voice trembled when she spoke. Did you go anywhere this week? She asked casually. Yes, I said. To the city. Why? She shrugged. Just wondering. That night, I could hear her pacing in her room, talking on the phone. I caught fragments of her whispers. No, she knows something. We might have to move faster. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might give out. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing this would soon turn into war. The next morning, I called Coleman. She knows, I said, then react now. He replied. By the end of that week. A case had been filed, Irene Wallace versus Melissa Wallace. For property fraud and forged documentation. When the police arrived to serve the notice, Melissa's face turned pale. Sophie was playing in the yard, unaware of the chaos unraveling around her. What is this? Melissa demanded, her voice shaking. I looked at her quietly. You tell me, Melissa. What is it? Her eyes filled with tears, but not of guilt. They were angry, defensive tears. I did this for my daughter, for her future. You're old, Irene. You can't take this house to your grave. Her words cut deeper than I could have imagined. And so you decided to steal it from me while I was still breathing. We stood there, facing each other in the garden. To women bound by the same family, torn apart by greed, she didn't answer. She turned and stormed inside, slamming the door. That night, Sophie came to my room again, her eyes red. Doddy, why are the police coming? Did Mummy do something bad? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Your mummy made a mistake, sweetheart. But mistakes can be fixed. If we tell the truth, she looked confused. Will she go to jail? I took her small hands in mine. I hope not. But the truth always comes out, one way or another. A week later, the first hearing took place. The courtroom was cold, the ceiling fans humming softly. I sat beside Coleman, clutching the real documents in my lap. Melissa sat across the aisle with her lawyer, a young, sharp-tongued man who looked more confident than he should have been. When the judge asked Melissa to speak, she stood and said with perfect poise, "Your Honor, my mother-in-law is an old woman. She must have signed the papers herself and forgotten. She's confused. This is just a misunderstanding." Gasps rippled through the room. I stared at her in disbelief. That was her defense, to make me look senile. Coleman stood, calm but firm. "Your Honor, my client is not confused. She is a victim of forgery. We have evidence, the registrar's duplicate file, and the handwriting analysis." The judge leaned forward. "Handwriting analysis?" Coleman nodded, placing two papers side by side. "As you can see, the signature on the forged document matches Mrs. Wallace's, but the pressure pattern is inconsistent. It's traced, not written naturally. We also have confirmation that the notary stamp used was counterfeit." Melissa's face paled. Her lawyer stammered something about technicalities, but the judge silenced him. "Forgery of property documents," the judge said gravely, "is not a technicality." In that moment, I looked at Melissa, really looked at her. She wasn't the same woman I had once welcomed into my home with open arms. Her eyes were cold, frightened, calculating. And yet, deep down, I saw something else. Shame. As the hearing ended, the judge ordered a temporary freeze on the property until the investigation concluded. Melissa stormed out, refusing to look at me. I followed slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last. Outside, the afternoon sun burned bright against the courthouse steps. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. There was only exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones. Coleman placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. "Justice moves slow, but it moves." I nodded, though my heart ached. I had spent my whole life building that home. And now it had become evidence in a courtroom, stripped of warmth, reduced to documents and seals. That evening, when I returned home, Sophie ran to me. "Doddy," she said, hugging my legs. "Mummy said we're going away for a few days." I knelt down. "Where are you going, sweetheart?" She looked uncertain. "I don't know. Mummy said maybe far away," and that's when I knew Melissa was running. The next morning, when I woke up, her room was empty. The closet half bare. The drawers cleared. Only a few of Sophie's toys remained scattered on the floor. She had taken her daughter and disappeared. I called Coleman immediately. "She's gone," I said, my voice trembling. He exhaled sharply. "Then it's only a matter of time before the police find her. The warrant will go out by tonight." "Don't worry, Irene, you're safe now." Safe. The word felt strange. Because even though justice was finally in motion, my heart felt hollow. I had won the truth, but lost my family. That night, I sat alone on the porch, the air cool and silent. The moon hung low over the city. And I thought of Sophie, her laughter, her warmth. The way she'd say "Doddy" like it was the most natural word in the world. I whispered into the night, "Please keep her safe, wherever she is," and for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if forgiveness was possible, or if I even wanted it to be. All I knew was this: the house that once held our love was now just a structure made of bricks and betrayal. But deep inside me, something else began to grow, a quiet, defiant strength, because sometimes life doesn't give you a choice between justice and peace. You just have to fight for one, and hope the other will find you later. You know, sometimes peace doesn't come from justice. It comes from the moment you decide to let go of the pain that justice can't fix. I used to think revenge or exposure could make me feel better, but what came after Melissa's betrayal showed me something deeper. Something about strength, family, and the strange mercy of time. That morning, when Mr. Coleman handed all the evidence to the police, I remember my hands trembling. My daughter-in-law, the woman I had trusted to look after my home. My son's memories had forged my signature, created false documents, and nearly succeeded in taking away the one thing I'd built with my own life. The police moved fast. Within a day, they traced the fake documents to a local lawyer, someone Melissa had bribed months ago. When they questioned him, he gave up everything. He said Melissa had planned this since the day I had fallen sick, pretending to care for me, all while moving my files, replacing originals with fakes. The police came to the house. I stood by the window with Sophie, holding her hand as two officers went upstairs and returned with Melissa, pale, shaken, and speechless. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, time just stopped. She didn't look like a criminal. She looked like a scared woman who had finally realized the weight of her choices. Mrs. Wallace, the officer said, she'll be taken in for questioning. You'll need to come to the station later for your statement. I nodded, unable to speak. My throat felt like it had closed up. Melissa tried to speak, but her voice broke. Mom. I didn't mean to. Don't, I whispered. Not now, please. They led her away. Sophie ran after her, crying, Mommy, Mommy, don't go. That sound, her tiny voice echoing down the hall, is something I'll never forget. It wasn't just pain. It was the sound of innocence breaking. For weeks after that day, the house felt emptier than ever. Melissa was out on bail, awaiting trial. My lawyer, Mr. Coleman, managed to secure all my property under legal protection, ensuring she couldn't touch a single document again. But even after all that, I couldn't sleep at night. Not because I was afraid, but because I kept asking myself, where did I go wrong? I had welcomed her into my home, my life. I had believed her tears when she said she loved my son. After he passed away, she and Sophie were all I had left of him. So how does love turn into greed? How does family turn into betrayal? Some nights I'd sit by the fire and Sophie would fall asleep beside me. She had nightmares, dreams where her mother was crying in a dark room. I'd hold her close and whisper, "It's okay, my darling. You're safe now." But one evening, there was a knock on the door. It was raining, and when I opened it, I saw Melissa standing there, drenched, exhausted, her eyes red from crying. She had been released temporarily before the next hearing. Irene. She said softly, "Please let me in. I have nowhere else to go." My heart clenched. Every instinct told me to close the door, to protect myself. But then I saw Sophie behind me, clutching her teddy bear, whispering, "Grandma, that's Mommy." So I stepped aside. "Come in," I said quietly. She hesitated, then walked in slowly. She looked around the house, the same house she had almost stolen. She touched the wall, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought if I owned it, I'd feel closer to him, to your son. But I was just lost. I kept thinking about money, about what I didn't have. I was wrong. I didn't answer right away." I watched her break down in front of me, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt tired. "You didn't just take papers, Melissa," I said softly. "You took trust. And once trust breaks, even love limps after it." She nodded, crying harder. "I know. I deserve what's coming. But can I at least see Sophie sometimes? I'll go wherever the court decides, but please, don't take her away from me." I sat down, motioning her to sit too. Sophie had already climbed into her mother's lap, holding her face with small hands. "Mommy, please don't cry." In that moment, something shifted in me. Yes, Melissa had betrayed me, deeply. But she was also a woman crushed under her own regrets, and Sophie didn't need to grow up in hate. I called Mr. Coleman the next morning. We arranged a mediation. I made sure the house and its assets were legally secure in my name, but I told the lawyer I don't want her punished more than necessary. Let her start again, for her child's sake. When the case closed, Melissa moved into a small apartment nearby. She started working part-time, attending counseling, and visiting Sophie on weekends. Each time she came, she was a little quieter, a little humbler, like someone learning to breathe again after years of drowning in her own lies, years later. When Sophie turned 16, she asked me something that made me tear up. "Grandma," she said, "why did you forgive Mom so easily, after what she did?" I smiled faintly, brushing her hair back. "Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, my dear. It means refusing to let pain decide how you live. If I'd held on to anger, it would have burned both of us." Sophie nodded slowly. She had her mother's eyes, but her father's kindness. That night, I wrote a letter for Sophie to open when she turned 18. It said, "The home you live in was almost lost once, not because of lies, but because of silence. Never stay silent when truth calls your name. But when you find the courage to speak, do it with love, not vengeance." Now, sitting on the porch years later, I look at the same house. Its walls carry every echo of what we've been through. Melissa sometimes visits, bringing flowers, staying quiet. She and Sophie have rebuilt their bond, slowly, painfully, but beautifully. Do I trust her completely again? Maybe not. But I've learned that some scars don't fade. They just stop hurting. If you're listening to me tonight, wherever you are, thank you. And if you've ever been betrayed by someone you love, remember this: you can rebuild money, homes, and lives. But rebuilding trust begins when you choose peace over pride. Because in the end, forgiveness isn't a gift for the one who hurt you, it's freedom for the one who survived.